Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidiri. As I mentioned, it's the 31st of July, 2025. And we're going to be kickstarting the show, I think, with a very, very important discussion. If you were listening to the show yesterday morning, we unpacked the looming US tariffs and how they threaten South Africa's automotive exports. Today, we're going to be shifting our focus to another vital engine of our economy. It employs many South Africans at a time where unemployment is at its peak. The agricultural sector, from the citrus orchards of Limpopo to the vineyards of the Western Cape, the sector is staring down crippling tariffs of up to 30% as President Donald Trump's August 1st deadline draws closer. And there doesn't seem to be a response, any kind of mitigating factor, a deal that can be put together at the last moment to, I don't know, scale down on those tariffs. And it looks like the reality is going to be that from tomorrow onwards, especially in the context of South Africa's economy, is going to be a whole new world, especially for South African exporters, especially those who rely on US buyers for fruits, beautiful wines, and juices. This could be the beginning of a trade nightmare. But what's really at stake here? Could we lose our competitive edge to countries like Brazil and Chile? Is the government doing enough to protect this sector? And can we pivot fast enough to markets like China or the Middle East, which is a question mark on that, because going about this conversation as if though those markets have long been waiting for South African produce, and we just so happen to have preferred the United States of America over them. But we'll be unpacking that, and to help us just make sense of what these tariffs could really mean for the food on our tables, for our farmers and our farm workers, and the hands that grow all that is beautiful about South Africa's agricultural sector. I'm now joined by Christo van der Rheede. He's the Executive Director of the FW de Klerk Foundation, and is also the former Executive Director of Agri SA. Christo, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Really appreciate you giving us your time this morning.
Good morning, and good morning to all of your listeners.
I think we can get right into it. We are in the final hour before the 1st of August and before those tariffs, 30% tariff hikes put into place by Donald Trump come to effect. Just from the agricultural sector's point of view, what is the key impact of these tariffs going to be, and what exactly does it mean for the sector in practical terms? Who's going to feel the pinch first?
I think it's important to contextualize the agricultural sector in South Africa. We are indeed very, very fortunate in the sense that we are self-sufficient. We only import rice and palm oil and a few other things, but we produce the bulk of our grains ourselves, meat. We also produce wool, cotton, you name it. I think we are very privileged in that regard. And obviously, in order for one to earn foreign exchange, you then start to export to the rest of the world all the surpluses that you've produced. But more so, you also seek specific markets where you can sell premium products like your premium wines, premium nuts, and so forth. And I think that's where American trade tariffs will certainly have a negative impact, because we have exported premium wines to the United States. About 30% of our macadamia nuts go to the United States. We also export citrus from certain areas in the country. Western Cape, Northern Cape goes to the United States. And a 30% hike will certainly render those products that we export to the United States, it will render it uncompetitive. But we need to take stock of what we export to the rest of the world. Remember, almost 40% of our exports go into Africa, A large part of our exports goes to the Middle East, to China, to the European Union. And it's relatively a small part of the agricultural sector that goes to the United States. But
Mm.
it remains a big concern because obviously there are certain regions, for example, the region in Clanwilliam citrus now, that has become solely dependent on exporting citrus to the United States. And we will have to find new markets for those citrus that have been produced there.
Mm. I think before we go into the new markets conversation, which I believe is a very, very important one, I want to talk about AGOA. It has allowed us duty-free access to the United States for years now. Are we now effectively, can we say with confidence that we are out of AGOA? And what does that do to our competitiveness compared to countries like Brazil, like Chile, or Australia, maybe, who face lower tariffs in comparison to South Africa?
Remember now that more than 150 countries are subjected to Trump's tariff regime. Uh, Brasilia, I just see now, Brasilia has been hit with a 50% tariff hike. That's
Mm,
massive. India, the same. I think Trump is meting out punishment to all of the BRICS countries or the BRICS aligned countries because this is no longer about fair trade. It's about punitive measures. It's about punishment. And that will come back to haunt the United States. And I'll explain it in the following way.
mm,
Remember, the United States of America has become reliant on um, imports to a very large extent. Trump has signed a lot of executive orders in the hope that the Americans will become self-reliant as opposed to dependent on imports from the rest of the world. The problem is it will push up the cost of production in America, and America will find it very difficult to become self-sufficient because we're all part of a global value chain. And remember, agriculture is counter-seasonal. In other words, when Brazil or Chile produces blueberries, South Africa, for example, is in a different season. And that is why it's so important to note that, because that's how the world works. When South Africa's produce is ready to be exported, the other countries are still growing their produce.
mm.
And that's going to impact very negatively. So the American consumer is going to pick up the brunt of this. So yes, I think what is important is that AGOA is no longer in existence. We can forget about that because already our cars that are being exported will be subject to the 30%. Our agricultural produce will be subjected to it. Regions like Oudtshoorn in the Western Cape, where we produce ostrich leather and ostrich meat, they will have to find new markets. But it will not have a significant impact overall. It will have a regional negative impact because, as I've said earlier, certain regions, certain product lines, have become really dependent on exporting to the United States. But yes, AGOA is gone, and we will have to now rethink our strategy in terms of, finding new markets for those produce that are losing out, and that will become quite costly in America.
Mm. And I want to go directly to that conversation, pivoting to new markets like China, like India, and some parts of the Middle East. How realistic is that prospect to pivot quickly to those new markets? Can it be done in the not so distant future, or will producers maybe for now simply just absorb the loss?
Remember, China has recently announced a tariff-free regime for African countries. I think about 52 African countries can now benefit from exporting to China tariff-free. So there's already a very positive development. Secondly, the European Union has also announce a particular tariff regime that will make it easier for us to export to the European Union. But for me, the important thing is why did it take the Department of Trade and Industry so long to come up with a counter strategy, a strategy that will enable South Africa to mitigate this kind of tariff hike that we are facing. And this should be a wake-up call for our administrators, for our government to get their act together. Because there's a couple of ways to overcome this. One, regional trade. We've got a SACU agreement, we've got a SADC agreement, but those agreements are not honored by our counterparts, Botswana, Mozambique, all of them. Instead of building a regional infrastructure network and because we've got millions of people living in the SADC region that must be developed, that must get access to good premium products. Why have we failed up to this point to really develop the southern region? Secondly, we have made a huge noise about the African Free Trade Agreement. The whole African continent is becoming the food basket of the world, but we don't trade with each other. We have trade barriers, etc., etc. And then we have the BRICS formation. Why haven't we really started to ensure that the BRICS countries have a more favorable and a more fair trade regime with each other? Because there's no use. China is opening up its markets, but we become just a dumping ground of Chinese products. Or we send our wool and our iron and our other minerals to China. It comes back as a final product. So we have to really think deep and hard and reflect on the causes that made South Africa just a producer of raw commodities that we send to the rest of the world, and it comes back as a final product. No wonder we sit with this massive unemployment crisis in the country. So we will have to go and do a lot of work. We will have to appoint the right people so that we implement strategies that benefit the SADC region, but also the African Free Trade Agreement, but also finding ways to leverage BRICS to our advantage. Whether you like Donald Trump or not, he is taking care of America. He has got his making America great again strategy, right? Where's our strategy to make the SADC region, to make Africa great again? And that's always the question that is spinning around in my head, that we really sleep on the job when it comes to taking care of our own interest.
Very, very important to note. Just one last question before I let you go. I want to stick on that, and you touched a bit on it. The government's response and just how long it took. It seems and looks like they've waited for the last hour after it announced that there won't be any extensions from the United States of America before these tariffs come into effect. The Department of Trade and Industry has reportedly offered a $60 billion investment deal to the US to kind of soften the blow. From where you sit, has the government done enough? Is this a credible counter offer, or a little bit too late when it comes to the United States of America? Or maybe, as you mentioned, it is a punitive measure from the United States of America to punish South Africa, whether it's for the ICJ or for its BRICS Plus partnership?
Remember, there's no rational grounds for the 30% tariff that Trump wants to impose on South Africa. Secondly, we have slept on the job. We have really failed to, understand how the multilateral frameworks that were in place have been undermined by this bilateral approach by Trump. And we knew, since January that, and when was it? In May, when Trump made the announcement that we will have to get our act together. But we have certainly failed, because it's one thing to make offers to Trump in terms of importing liquid gas from America, from the United States. But what about the liquid gas fields in Mozambique? We have more than enough gas to become self-sufficient as a region. But we've allowed, people there to, uh, turn the whole area into an area where you can hardly now go and access those gas fields. We've got some critical minerals that America are dependent on. And Trump was very clever. He says, no, no, no. I'll slap you with a 30% tariff hike on your cars and on your agricultural goods, but I'm not going to impose tariffs on your critical minerals that you export to America. Now, why did we allow that situation to, at the end of the day, be dictated by Trump instead of saying, hold on, if you want our critical minerals, then we want a better deal in terms of the tariffs that you impose on, agricultural goods, cars, and other things. So yes, they've slept on the job, and I must say, I don't think they're going to reach a good deal. And at the end of the day, South Africans are going to suffer as a result of pure incompetence, a lack of foresight, and a lack of really leveraging the opportunities that exist within the southern region on the African continent. African leaders, political leaders, have to get their act together because of their, narrow-mindedness and lack of empathy for the suffering of the African majority. That is why we are in the situation that we find ourselves. The self-serving interests, unfortunately, are reigning supreme at the expense of our people.
I think we're going to on that note, Christo. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you giving us your time. And yeah, I think we'll wake up tomorrow to a whole new world when it comes to trade and our relations with the United States of America.
Indeed. Pleasure, sir. Take care.
There you go. That was Christo van der Rheede helping us break down what could be one of the most significant trade disruptions South Africa's agricultural sector has faced in recent memory. And as the clock ticks towards US's August 1st deadline, producers, exporters, and entire communities who rely on these industries are still searching for answers and still waiting for leadership. Whether it's citrus, wine, or table grapes, it's not just about exports, it's about jobs, food, security, and South Africa's place in a shifting global economy. Coming up after the break, we're going to be turning our attention to the MV Ultramarine, still docked in Durban under suspicion of carrying military goods to Israel. We'll speak to Deborah Earing from the KZN Palestine Solidarity Forum.